Hello, this is a video about this cassette deck which I bought from eBay for £20 and it was advertised as not tested, and it seems that there is something wrong with this. At least the eject button doesn't work, and I can't test this yet because it has this UK style power plug, and I'm going to replace the whole power cord with this Euro style cord, and I am going to take this apart to check what is inside and see if I can fix the issue with the eject mechanism. There seems to be a cassette inside which says Beatles, and of course it is there because they couldn't open the tray. Also, one thing I'd like to know about this deck is who is actually the manufacturer of this unit, as this was sold under this Marantz name and also Denon. So let's take this apart. Now the power cord is replaced, and as soon as I turned the power on, there was a very slight sound from the mechanism, and it opens now, so there was nothing broken. The vacuum fluorescent display is working fine, and the belt is okay. It has a kind of Eastern feel to this, although it has some kind of high-end elements like these grounding points on several locations on the case, and the case itself is quite thick metal, I'd say. The capacitors are not very familiar to me. The blue ones are branded JJ, and the black ones say Acon on them, and I can't see any kind of a name of the circuit boards. There are only numbers. An interesting feature on this device is this Dolby S board, which uses Sony chips. Both of these chips are Sony, and it has two of these. And it might be that it has one for each channel. It's a bit hard to say, as I don't know anything about this, but the circuit board looks identical. It's like a mirror of each other, each half of the board. This chip over there has a Dolby symbol on it, and there is an NEC chip. And some JRC chips over here. These are quite possibly op amps. And here is the transformer. And here is the playback mechanism itself. It has two motors on it, and two heads. Those might need a little bit of cleaning. It has some kind of blue marks over here. This button especially. Some of that on this display. But in general, this is in very good shape. Okay, there is not much more to say about this, and I'm going to install the top cover on and go test this. Now this unit seems to be working quite nicely. It is producing a sound out of a cassette, and it sounds pretty nice. But one thing that doesn't sound very nice in here is this motor right here. I can show you. The motor is running very dry. I think it has sleeve bearings, and it isn't the belt slipping because the playing speed is just fine. It is this motor which is dry. I could see if I could get some grease inside the motor, somehow. It looks like the connections for this motor are soldered directly on this circuit board, and it is mounted with screws. Okay, so when you buy untested items, you can get them more cheaply, but you should always prepare for some extra work. Okay, the front panel is now off. I did not notice this screw right here, which connects this mechanism frame to this circuit board, and it is the only screw that is holding this front panel. The cassette mechanism is out, but I still can't see the screw heads, and I have to disassemble this even more. Now this panel is off, and finally I can see the screw heads which are under there. So let's take this motor out. And here is the motor. It is definitely dry. I can't see any points where this could be opened. I can get some oil on this front bearing, but the bearing behind this cover would not be greased. Maybe I could find another motor too, but I am going to try to get this open. I'm in the shed now, and I am thinking of making some cuts on this cover so I could open this top cover off. The cover is now off, but all I can see is the circuit board, and one thing I could do is to drill a hole on this plastic cover, which quite possibly leads to the bearing, but I am trying to remove the circuit board first. Now the circuit board is removed. I had to unsolder these 2 points. We have the whole motor disassembled. The bearing on the drive pulley side looks like it is a bit harder material than this one. This seems like a normal bronze sleeve bearing, and the axial bearing is plastic. I am going to put some grease on those and then try to reassemble this. Now there is a tiny bit of grease on there and some of grease on this front bearing as well. Grease is always better for a longer term lubrication because grease is releasing oil all the time and it lasts very long before it gets dry. You should always check that your grease is compatible with the plastic parts of your machines. But now if I pushed the stator on top of the rotor, these magnets would pull the rotor in very violently and it would quite possibly be pulled away from this bearing and damage the process. So I should put something through this bearing and kind of push this axle at the same time as moving this over the rotor. I'll see if I can figure out something. Okay, I ended up using this thin nylon wire to tie the rotor on this plastic cover and with this I was able to push the whole assembly in this body. And the motor is reassembled and ready to be installed back into machine. Now the motor is back and I don't replace the belt now because it looks like it is very easy to do afterwards if I need to, and the belt feels okay. I like this electromagnet over here. It looks like that this black panel can be removed through this hatch, and in that case it wouldn't be necessary to take this whole panel off to get access to the motor screws. It is all done now. The connectors are plugged in and yeah, let's try this with this tape. Let's plug this unit back in and switch the power on and press play. I heard something, but I think when the grease starts to find its way all the way in the bearings, it will smoothen out. And right now the motor is running very silently. This is a lot better than before, and I am expecting this to last because the bearings were not very worn, and in the case it starts to scream again, I will do this again if it lasts long enough, or order a replacement motor for this. And just another look at this Dolby S unit, and looking at this connector here and its labels, we can see that the thing runs with 7.5 volts, and it is indeed true that both channels require their own Sony chip for the Dolby S operations, and this chip on the main circuit board is responsible for the Dolby B and C operations. There are various adjustments on the board. Here are record gain adjustment for both channels, and here are some bias adjustments and playback EQ for both channels can be adjusted in here, and playback gain and yeah, for both channels. It looks like the noise hasn't come back. I've been using this deck for several hours now, and the running speed of the motor is stable, and everything sounds great. So, thank you for watching this video.